I counted 3 times. 3 times my son-in-law spoke harshly to my daughter at that dinner table. 3 times he gripped her shoulder roughly enough to make her wince, and his mother, Elin, sat across from me with a smile on her face like she was watching her favorite show. When Trevor told Tessa to shut up and get the wine, Elin nodded approvingly. When he squeezed Tessa's shoulder and said she was embarrassing him in front of family, Elin's smile widened. When he snapped his fingers at her like she was a waitress and Tessa's eyes went glassy with humiliation, Elin actually clapped. 3 slow, deliberate claps. "That's how she learns to behave," she said. "Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation?" My vision tunneled. The sounds of the dining room, silverware on plates, Maisie's nervous fidgeting, Lydia's sharp intake of breath beside me. All of it faded to white noise. My hands stayed flat on the table, my face stayed calm. 63 years on this earth had taught me how to keep a camera steady when buildings burned and cars flipped and people screamed. I could keep my expression calm through anything. But a chill ran through me. I stood without a word, pulled my phone from my pocket, and walked down the hallway while Trevor laughed at something with his mother, their voices loud and careless. I dialed a number I'd saved 2 years earlier after covering a story on emergency response protocols. Inspector Howell had said, "If you ever need something handled fast, call me directly." "Howell," I said quietly. "It's Graham Brentor. I need a team sent to an address immediately. Child safety concern. Possible emotional harm in front of a minor." I gave him Trevor's address, gave him details, clinical, specific, the way I'd learned to report facts after decades behind a camera. Unsafe emotional environment. Witnessed aggressive behavior toward spouse, child present, and visibly distressed. "How urgent?" Howell asked. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't." "I'll have someone there in 10 minutes. I hung up, stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to Elin's voice drift from the dining room. She's gotten so much better since Trevor started being firmer with her. 10 minutes. I walked back to the table, sat down, picked up my water glass. Tessa's eyes found mine across the table. Confused, frightened, searching, I gave her the smallest nod. Headlights swept across the front windows exactly 9 minutes later. The knock on the door was loud and official. Trevor frowned. "Who the hell is that?" Elin looked annoyed. "Did you forget to tip someone?" I sipped my water and said nothing. Trevor opened the door to 3 people in city jackets with badges clipped to their belts. The lead inspector was a woman in her 40s with a tablet in her hands and an expression that said she'd seen enough nonsense for one lifetime. "Trevor Lang?" "Yeah?" "We're here for a safety inspection. We received a report about potential unsafe conditions and emotional distress involving a minor on the premises." Trevor's face went red. "What? That's insane. Who reported?" "We're not required to disclose that," the woman said calmly. "We need to speak with everyone in the household and do a walkthrough." Elin stood up, voice sharp. "This is harassment. You can't just barge into someone's home because of some anonymous—" "We can, actually," the inspector said, "and we are. Please step back." I watched Trevor's jaw clench, watched Elin's hands ball into fists, watched Tessa's shoulders relax just a fraction, like someone had cut a wire that had been pulling her too tight for too long. Maisie sat frozen in her chair, eyes wide. The inspectors moved through the house with methodical efficiency, asked questions, took notes. One of them spoke quietly with Tessa in the kitchen while Trevor paced and Elin hissed objections that no one acknowledged. I stayed seated, finished my water, let them work. 20 minutes later, the lead inspector stepped outside with Howell, who'd arrived as backup. I followed, casual, like I was just getting some air. Howell glanced at me. "You said it was urgent. You were right. What happens now?" "We document everything. File a report. If there's a next time, it won't be a polite visit." I nodded. Understood. When I came back inside, Tessa was standing in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes met mine again, this time with something that looked like hope mixed with terror. Trevor slammed a cabinet door in the kitchen. Elin was on her phone, already calling someone to complain. I picked up my coat. Lydia stood beside me, quiet and calm as always. She'd known exactly what I was doing the moment I stood up from the table. 30 years as a legal secretary had taught her how to recognize the moment someone decided to go to war. "We're leaving," I said. Tessa stepped forward. "Dad." "We'll talk tomorrow," I said softly. "You're not alone in this." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not in front of Trevor, not in front of Elin. We left. In the car, Lydia finally spoke. "That was the warning shot." "Yeah. What's next?" I pulled onto the main road, hands steady on the wheel. Next, I start filming properly. The camera doesn't lie. People do. The camera just watches. I've spent 40 years behind lenses, news cameras, security cameras, cameras that rolled while buildings collapsed and politicians lied and families fell apart in real time. I learned early that the truth isn't what people say. It's what they do when they think no one important is watching. Trevor thought I was no one important. That was his first mistake. The morning after the inspection, I stopped by the station early. Our equipment room is a chaotic mess of tripods, cables, batteries, and cameras in various states of repair. I signed out 2 small wireless units, the kind we use for undercover consumer protection pieces. Compact, high resolution, excellent audio. Working on something? Miles Carterson, the station director, leaned against the doorframe with his coffee. Just a personal project, I said. Personal projects make me nervous, Graham. I smiled. When have I ever made trouble? You haven't. That's what makes me nervous. I clipped the cameras into my bag and headed home. Lydia was already up, laptop open on the kitchen table, reading something with the focus she usually reserved for contract law. What are you looking at? I asked. Public business filings for Trevor's restaurant, the Tidewater Grill. And it's barely profitable. He's leveraged to his eyeballs. 1 bad quarter and he's finished. I set the camera bag on the counter. How bad? Bad enough that he can't afford any kind of scandal. His investors are already skittish. I found 3 complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau in the last 6 months. Service issues, food quality, 1 mention of aggressive management. Aggressive management, I repeated. Code for Trevor screaming at his staff. I opened the bag and pulled out the first camera. Then let's make sure everyone gets a closer look at his management style. Lydia watched me set up the camera on a small shelf near our front door, angled to cover the entryway and living room. You're turning our house into a surveillance zone. I'm documenting, I said. There's a difference. Legal difference? Enough of one. She smiled, tight and cold. Good. I installed the second camera in the kitchen, hidden inside a decorative clock on the shelf. Both cameras fed to a cloud server with encrypted backup. If Trevor ever came to our house again, and I knew he would, every word, every gesture, every threat would be recorded. But I needed more than our house. I needed his. That afternoon, I drove to Tessa's neighborhood. Parked a block away, waited. Trevor's car was gone, probably at the restaurant, trying to smooth things over with investors after the inspection rattled them. I texted Tessa, "Can we talk? Just you and me." 3 minutes passed. Then, "He's not home. Come now." I found her in the kitchen, hands shaking as she poured coffee she didn't drink. Maisie was at school. The house was quiet in that terrible way houses get when someone's fear has soaked into the walls. "Dad, what did you do last night?" I made a phone call. They asked me questions about Trevor, about how he talks to me. "What did you say?" She looked down at her coffee. I told them everything was fine. My chest tightened. "Tessa." "I had to," she said, voice breaking. "If I didn't, he would have known I said something. He would have..." She stopped, took a breath. "He would have made it worse." I moved closer, kept my voice low and steady. "How long has this been going on?" "Since Maisie was born. Maybe before. I don't know anymore." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. He doesn't hit me. Not really. Just grabs, pushes, yells, says I'm useless, that I'd be nothing without him, that if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I never saw Maisie again." "Do you believe him?" "He has money, lawyers. Everyone thinks he's charming." She laughed bitterly. "I don't know what I believe anymore." I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app. "I need you to say that again, on camera." She stepped back. "Dad, no. If he finds out." "He won't. Not until it's too late for him to do anything about it." "You don't understand. He'll take her. He'll take Maisie and I'll..." "Tessa." I waited until she looked at me. "I've been filming news for 40 years. I know how to destroy someone's credibility. I know how to make sure the whole city sees exactly who he is. But I can't do it without you." Her hands were still shaking. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure he can't hurt you anymore. I'm going to take everything he uses to control you and turn it into evidence. His business, his reputation, his mother's precious social standing, all of it. And then what? And then you and Maisie are free." She stared at me for a long time. I could see the war in her eyes. The part of her that wanted to believe me fighting the part that had been beaten down for so long she didn't remember what hope felt like. Finally, she whispered, "If I do this, Will you finish it? Yes. Promise me. I promise. She took the phone from my hand, sat down at the kitchen table, looked into the camera, and she talked. She talked for 20 minutes, told me everything. The names he called her, the way he controlled money, friends, time, the threats about Maisie. The night he shoved her into a wall and then apologized with flowers and promises. The dinners with Elin where his mother praised him for keeping Tessa in line. When she finished, her face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. What now? She asked. Now I start building the case. I spent the next week gathering everything I could. I used my press credentials to pull public records on Trevor's restaurant, health inspections, business licenses, employee complaints. I called in favors with people who owed me from stories I'd shot over the years. Inspector Howell gave me off-the-record details about previous complaints at the Tidewater Grill. Nothing major enough to shut him down, but enough to show a pattern. A former line cook I tracked down told me Trevor once threw a plate at someone's head during a dinner rush. A hostess said he screamed at her for seating a table wrong and made her cry in front of customers. I recorded everything, documented everything, and then I went to see Miles. Miles Carterson had been running the station for 15 years. He was cautious, political, obsessed with ratings and legal exposure, but he was also a journalist at heart, and journalists love a story that writes itself. I knocked on his office door at the end of the day, when most of the crew had gone home. Graham, come in. I sat down across from his desk. I want to pitch a segment. On? Restaurant safety. Hidden risks in upscale dining? He leaned back in his chair, skeptical. That's pretty niche. People care about where they eat, and there's been an uptick in health code violations at higher-end places. I think there's a story there. You have a specific place in mind? A few. I'd keep it general, talk about what to look for, interview some inspectors, maybe film some exteriors. Nothing libelous. Miles studied me. Why do I feel like there's more to this? Because you're smart. Graham. I'm pitching a legitimate story. If it happens to shine a light on places that need scrutiny, that's called journalism. He drummed his fingers on the desk. You shoot it clean. No witch hunts. No naming names unless we have ironclad evidence. Understood. And if this blows back on us, it's your neck. Fair. He sighed. Fine. Pitch it at the morning meeting. 2 days later, I was standing outside the Tidewater Grill with a camera on my shoulder and a press badge clipped to my jacket. The restaurant sat on the waterfront, all glass and exposed brick, the kind of place that looked expensive and felt empty. A few lunch customers sat inside, but the place wasn't busy. I filmed the exterior, the signage, the alley behind the building where the dumpsters overflowed, and the ventilation hoods looked like they hadn't been cleaned in months. Trevor wasn't there. I'd checked his social media. He was at some business lunch across town, posting photos of himself with investors. Perfect. I went inside, smiled at the hostess. Hi, I'm with Channel 7. We're doing a piece on waterfront dining. Mind if I get some interior shots? She hesitated. I should ask the manager. It'll just take a minute. Totally positive piece. Great publicity. She relented. I moved through the dining room with the camera, filming everything. The decor, the tables, the kitchen doors that swung open just long enough for me to catch a glimpse of frayed wiring and a fire extinguisher 2 months past inspection. I filmed the staff too, the way they moved, tense, quick, like they were afraid of making mistakes. I knew that body language. I'd seen it in abuse victims before. Back at the station, I edited the footage into a clean 3-minute segment. No direct accusations, just facts. Some waterfront restaurants have been flagged for minor safety concerns. Here's what to look for when dining out. We blurred the name on the sign, but anyone who knew the waterfront would recognize the building. The segment aired on the evening news. By morning, Trevor's phone was ringing nonstop. I know because Tessa texted me. He's furious. Investors are asking questions. What did you do? I texted back, told the truth, stay safe. That night, Trevor showed up at my house. I watched him on the camera feed as he got out of his car and stormed up the walkway. Lydia was in the kitchen. I stood near the door and waited. He pounded on it hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it slowly. Trevor. You. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. You did this. Did what? That news story. The restaurant piece. That was my place. Was it? I didn't mention any names. Everyone knows it was mine. I've had 3 investors pull out today. 3. I kept my voice calm. Maybe you should have kept your permits up to date. He stepped forward, jabbing a finger at my chest. You think you can ruin me? You think you can... I think, I said quietly, that you've been ruining my daughter for years. And now you're finding out what it feels like. His hand shot out, grabbing the front of my shirt. Big mistake. The camera in the entryway caught everything. Lydia's phone, recording from the kitchen doorway, caught it from another angle. Let go, I said. Or what? You'll call your inspector friends again? You'll make another TV story? No, I said. I'll make sure every second of this ends up in front of a judge when Tessa files for custody. He froze. I pulled his hand off my shirt, slowly, deliberately. That wasn't sabotage, Trevor. That was a warning shot. If you ever touch my daughter again, if you ever threaten her, if you so much as raise your voice at her in front of Maisie, I will bury you so deep you'll never see daylight. He backed up, chest heaving. You're insane. No, I'm a father. There's a difference. He turned and stormed back to his car, peeled out of the driveway fast enough to leave rubber on the pavement. Lydia appeared beside me. That was reckless. That was necessary. She held up her phone, still recording. At least we have it. I closed the door, locked it, went to my laptop and uploaded the footage to the encrypted server. Trevor had just made his second mistake. He thought this was over. It had barely started. The thing about revenge is that it works best when it isn't chaotic. People assume it's all about acting on impulse, driven by raw emotion. Sometimes that's true. But the kind that truly dismantles someone? That's cold, precise, constructed step by step until escape is impossible. I'd spent 40 years learning how to build a story, how to gather footage, structure a narrative, control the pacing so the audience doesn't look away. This was the same process, except the audience was the whole city, and the story was Trevor's downfall. Step 1. Make him panic. The morning after he showed up at my house, I sent a carefully worded email to the health department. Anonymous, professional, detailed observations about ventilation issues, possible cross-contamination risks, and staff complaints I'd overheard while filming. 2 days later, inspectors arrived at the Tidewater Grill unannounced. Tessa texted me. Health department is here. Trevor is losing his mind. I texted back, good. The inspection turned up 3 violations, minor but public. The restaurant was required to post the report in the front window for 30 days. Trevor's rating dropped from an A to a B+. Doesn't sound like much. But in a city where people choose restaurants based on Yelp reviews and Instagram photos, a B+ might as well be a scarlet letter. Reservations started canceling. Step 2, turn up the pressure. I pitched another segment to Miles. Follow up on restaurant safety. Interview with a health inspector about what the ratings actually mean. Miles approved it. I filmed the interview in front of a generic restaurant. Neutral, educational. But I made sure to include footage of ratings posted in windows, including one quick shot, barely 3 seconds long, of the Tidewater Grill's new B+ certificate. The segment aired during the dinner hour, prime time. Trevor's online reviews exploded with comments. Saw the health rating, not going back. Used to love this place, but if they can't keep an A rating, overpriced and apparently not even clean. I monitored his social media, watched him post desperate damage control messages. We take safety seriously. Minor paperwork issue, already resolved. But the internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. His weekend reservations dropped by 40%. Tessa called me, voice low. He's talking about closing for renovations. He can't afford it, but he thinks it'll make people stop talking. Let him, I said. The more he flails, the worse it gets. Dad, he's getting scary. He threw a glass at the wall last night. Maisie heard it. My hand tightened on the phone. Did he hurt you? No, but he's unraveling. Good. Keep your distance. Document everything. If he touches you, call the police immediately. I'm scared. I know, but you're not alone. I hung up and sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. Lydia came in, set a hand on my shoulder. You're thinking about stopping. No. Liar. I looked up at her. He threw a glass. Maisie heard it. Which is exactly why you can't stop now. If you back off, he'll think he can get away with worse. She was right. She was always right. Step 3, hid his money. I didn't need to fabricate anything. Trevor's financial situation was already a disaster. I just needed to make sure the right people knew about it. I reached out to a contact at the city business licensing office, asked some casual questions about restaurants under financial review, mentioned I was working on a story about small business struggles during economic downturns. She gave me a list of restaurants that had filed for extensions on their license renewals due to cash flow problems. The Tidewater Grill was on it. I didn't use the information directly. Instead, I let it slip to a food blogger I knew, someone with a decent following and a habit of turning rumors into trending posts. 3 days later, the blog post went live. Is the Tidewater Grill in financial trouble? It was speculative, careful. But it asked the right questions. Investors started pulling out faster. Trevor's main backer, a guy named Preston who owned half the commercial properties on the waterfront, called a meeting. Tessa told me about it later. Trevor came home looking like he'd been hollowed out. Preston wants out, she said. He told Trevor he's overextended and unreliable. How much does Trevor owe him? 200,000, maybe more. I whistled low. That's a lot of pressure. He's talking about selling the house. Your house? It's in his name. He says we'll downsize, that it's temporary. Her voice cracked. Dad, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch him tear everything apart and pretend it's fine. Then don't, I said. Move in with me and Lydia. Bring Maisie. Get out. He'll never let me take her. He won't have a choice. Silence on the line. Then quietly. When? Soon. I'm almost done. Step 4. Isolate him. Trevor's strength came from his image. The charming businessman, the successful restaurateur, the guy everyone wanted to work with. I needed to crack that image wide open. I started asking around, quietly, carefully, about Trevor's behavior. Talked to former employees, suppliers, people who'd done business with him. The stories came pouring out. A delivery driver said Trevor once refused to pay for an order because it arrived 10 minutes late, then threatened to ruin the company if they pushed back. A sous chef said Trevor screamed at her in front of the entire kitchen staff, called her incompetent, then docked her pay. A bartender said he'd seen Trevor grab Tessa's arm hard enough to leave marks during a private event. I recorded every interview, saved every email, built a file so thick it could double as a weapon. And then Elin made her move. She showed up at my house on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced. Lydia answered the door. I need to speak with Graham, Elin said, voice clipped. Lydia stepped aside. He's in the living room. Elin walked in like she owned the place. She was dressed in one of her expensive pantsuits, hair perfect, makeup flawless. She looked like someone who'd never been challenged in her life. That was about to change. Graham, she said, we need to talk. I set down the camera I'd been cleaning. About this campaign you're running against my son. I'm not running a campaign. I'm reporting facts. You're destroying his business, his reputation, his life. He did that himself. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're protecting Tessa, but you're making everything worse. If Trevor loses the restaurant, she loses her home, her security, everything. She already lost those things, I said. She just didn't realize it because he made her think she needed him. Elin's face hardened. You're not going to win this. I already am. I have lawyers, resources, connections. If you keep pushing, I will bury you in lawsuits until you have nothing left. Lydia stepped forward. Try it. We have documentation of every threat Trevor's made, every instance of abuse, every business violation. You file a lawsuit, and all of that becomes public record. Discovery works both ways, Elin. Elin's composure cracked, just for a second. You're bluffing. Test me, Lydia said. They stared at each other. Two women who'd built their lives on control, now locked in a silent battle. Elin turned to leave, stopped at the door. My son made mistakes, but Tessa isn't innocent. She's weak. She always has been. If she'd just learned to behave... Get out, I said. She looked back at me, startled. Get out of my house, now. She left. I watched her car pull away, hands clenched into fists. Lydia touched my arm. She's scared. She should be. That night, I called Tessa. Pack a bag. You and Maisie. Come stay with us. Dad? I'm not asking. She arrived 2 hours later, Maisie half asleep in the back seat, a duffel bag in the trunk. Trevor didn't try to stop her. He was too busy trying to keep his restaurant from collapsing. The thing about watching someone fall apart is that it's not dramatic, not like in movies. There's no single moment where everything explodes. It's gradual. A crack here, a slip there, and then one day you look up and realize the whole structure is gone. Trevor's structure was crumbling. The Tidewater Grill closed for emergency renovations 3 days after Tessa moved in with us. The announcement went out on social media with a glossy photo and a caption about recommitting to excellence. The comments section tore him apart. Translation, they failed another inspection. Just admit you're broken close already. Used to be good. Now it's just sad. I watched Trevor's online presence deteriorate in real time. He stopped responding to comments, stopped posting. His last update was a blurry photo of the empty dining room with the caption, "Coming back stronger." He didn't come back at all. Tessa settled into the guest room with Maisie. For the first few days, she barely spoke, just moved through the house like a ghost, checking her phone obsessively, flinching at every notification. "He keeps texting," she said one morning, showing me the screen. The messages were frantic, angry, desperate. "You can't just leave. We need to talk about this. You're being manipulated. I'll forgive you if you come back now. You're making a huge mistake." I handed the phone back. "Block him." "What if he tries to take Maisie?" "He won't. He's too busy trying to save himself." She blocked him anyway. 2 days later, a lawyer's letter arrived. Trevor was filing for emergency custody, claiming Tessa had abandoned the family home and was emotionally unstable. Lydia read it, snorted, and tossed it on the table. "He's fishing. He has no case." "Are you sure?" Tessa's voice was small. "Positive. He's backed into a corner and he's swinging blind. We'll respond, we'll provide documentation of his behavior, and a judge will laugh him out of the room." "What if?" "Tessa." Lydia's voice was firm but kind. "You're safe here. Maisie's safe here. Trevor can file all the paperwork he wants. It won't change the facts." But I knew Trevor wouldn't stop with paperwork. He showed up at the station 4 days later. I was in the equipment room, logging footage from a city council meeting when one of the interns knocked on the door. "Graham, there's a guy out front asking for you. Says it's urgent." I already knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, turned on the voice recorder, and walked out to the lobby. Trevor was pacing near the front desk, disheveled. His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Oh, Graham," he said when he saw me. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. You took my wife. You took my daughter. You destroyed my business. The least you can do is hear me out." I glanced at the receptionist. "Call security." "Wait." Trevor stepped forward. "Just listen. Please." I stopped. "You have 30 seconds. I know I made mistakes. I know I was rough with Tessa sometimes, but I never meant to hurt her. I was stressed. The restaurant, the money, the pressure. It got to me. But I'm getting help, therapy, anger management. I just need her to give me another chance." "No. Graham, you don't get another chance. You don't get to scream at her and control her and threaten her and then apologize your way out of it. I love her. You love owning her. There's a difference." His jaw clenched. "You can't keep her from me forever." "I'm not keeping her from you. She chose to leave. That's on you." He took another step forward. Security was already moving toward us from the hallway. "You're going to regret this," Trevor said, voice low. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I still have options. I still have—" "What?" I interrupted. "Money? Gone. Business? Closed. Reputation? Destroyed. What exactly do you have left, Trevor?" His face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, reaching for me. I stepped back. Security grabbed him by both arms, hauling him toward the door. "This isn't over," he shouted. "You hear me? This isn't over." They dragged him outside. I stood in the lobby, heart pounding, phone still recording. The receptionist stared at me. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "Should we call the police?" "No. Just make sure he's banned from the building." I went back to the equipment room, saved the recording, sent it to Lydia with a text. "Add this to the file." She responded immediately. "He's getting desperate. Be careful." I knew she was right. Desperate people do stupid things. But I was counting on it. That night, I edited together a new segment. Not for broadcast, not yet. This one was personal. I pulled footage from every encounter I'd filmed. Trevor grabbing Tessa at the dinner, his rant at my house, the altercation at the station. I interspersed it with clips from the health inspections, the financial filings, the interviews with former employees. I added Tessa's testimony, her face on camera, telling the truth about what her marriage had really been like. The final cut was 11 minutes long. It was devastating. I saved it to a secure drive, backed it up in 3 places, and then I waited. Trevor's next move came faster than I expected. He went after Tessa directly. She was picking up Maisie from school when he appeared in the parking lot. Just stood by his car, waiting, watching. Tessa called me, voice shaking. "He's here. Stay in your car. Lock the doors. I'm calling the police." "He's just standing there. He's not doing anything." "He doesn't have to. He's trying to scare you. Don't let him." The school security guard noticed Trevor and approached him. They talked for a minute. Trevor got in his car and left. But the message was clear. He knew where she was. He could get to her anytime he wanted. That night, I filed for a restraining order on Tessa's behalf. Lydia helped draft the petition. We included everything, the texts, the threats, the recordings, the testimonies. The judge granted a temporary order. Trevor was required to stay at least 500 feet away from Tessa, Maisie, and our home. He violated it 3 days later. Showed up at the house at midnight, pounding on the door, yelling for Tessa to come out and stop being a coward. I called the police. They arrived within minutes. Arrested him for violating the restraining order. He spent the night in a cell. Elin bailed him out the next morning. And that's when I knew it was time to finish this. The final piece aired on a Thursday night. I'd pitched it to Miles as a special investigative segment. Toxic business culture, how power and pressure corrupt local success stories. He'd been hesitant at first. This feels personal, Graham. It is personal, I admitted, but it's also true, and people need to see it. If we air this and it blows back, it won't. I have everything documented, every source verified, every claim backed up. He studied me for a long moment. This is about your son-in-law, isn't it? It's about men who cause serious harm while hiding behind charm and money. He just happens to be one of them. Miles sighed, rubbed his face. If this goes wrong, it won't. It better not, because if it does, we're both finished. The segment was structured around 3 case studies. 2 were legitimate investigations I'd worked on over the past month. A construction company with labor violations, a law firm accused of discriminatory hiring practices. The third was Trevor. I didn't name him directly, didn't show his face, but I showed everything else. Footage of the Tidewater Grill, interviews with former employees describing a hostile work environment, health inspection reports, financial documents showing mismanagement and debt, and then, in the final section, I played Tessa's testimony. Her face filled the screen. Calm, steady, heartbreaking. She described years of emotional control, the constant criticism, the threats, the fear. She talked about the dinner where her husband treated her roughly 3 times, and his mother clapped and said, "That's how she learns to behave." Her voice didn't waver. Her eyes didn't look away from the camera. When the segment ended, the studio was silent. Miles turned to me. "That's going to explode." "I know. People are going to figure out who she's talking about. That's the point." The segment aired at 6:30 during the evening news. By 7, social media was on fire. Someone recognized the restaurant. Posted screenshots comparing my footage to photos from Trevor's Instagram. Someone else found old reviews mentioning the angry owner. A former employee posted, "I worked there. Everything she said is true. He's a nightmare." The comments piled up. Hundreds, then thousands. "This is the Tidewater Grill. I know that building. I knew the owner was bad news. That poor woman. I hope she got out. Someone should report this guy." By 8, local news sites were picking it up. Controversial segment exposes alleged abuse in local restaurant. By 9, Trevor's phone was ringing nonstop. Investors, suppliers, lawyers. Elin called me at 9:30. "You destroyed him," she said. No preamble, just fury. "He destroyed himself. You'll pay for this. I'll make sure You'll do nothing," I said, "because if you come after me, I'll release the unedited footage. All of it, including the parts where you encouraged his behavior, where you praised him for controlling Tessa, where you told her she was weak for not putting up with it." Silence. "How much of that do you think your social circle will accept, Elin? How many of your charity boards and country club friends will stay by your side when they see you applauding while your son mistreats his wife? You're bluffing. Try me." She hung up. I sat in the dark living room, phone in my hand, waiting. Trevor's response came at 11. Not a phone call, not a text. He came to the station. I got the alert from building security. Someone's trying to bypass the front entrance. Cameras show him heading toward the back loading dock. I pulled up the security feed on my laptop. Trevor was there, moving fast, carrying something heavy. A toolbox, maybe. Or a bag. He wasn't thinking straight. He was running on rage and desperation. Perfect. I grabbed my jacket. Told Lydia, "Stay here. Lock the doors." "Graham, I'll be fine. Just keep Tessa and Maisie safe." I drove to the station, parked in the back lot, slipped in through the side entrance. The building was mostly empty. A skeleton crew in the control room, a couple editors finishing late projects. I moved through the hallways, following the security feed on my phone. Trevor was in the equipment room, smashing cameras. Not mine, just random station equipment, expensive gear that had nothing to do with the story. He was unraveling. I stopped in the doorway. "That's not going to help." He spun around, breathing hard. "You. Me. You ruined everything." "No, I just showed people who you really are." He picked up a tripod, held it like a weapon. "I'm going to make you take it back. All of it. You're going to go on air and say you lied. I didn't lie. Then you'll say Tessa lied, that she's unstable, that I'm not doing any of that. He moved toward me, tripod raised. Yes, you will. I stepped back into the hallway, kept my voice calm. Put it down, Trevor. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just filmed it. He swung the tripod. I ducked. It slammed into the wall, denting the drywall. Security alarms started blaring. Trevor's eyes went wild. No, I'm not. I didn't mean... I backed toward the control room. It's over, Trevor. Walk away now, and maybe you don't go to jail. I can't walk away. I have nothing left. No business, no wife, no daughter, nothing. That's not my fault. Yes, it is. He charged at me, swinging the tripod again. I shoved a rolling equipment cart into his path. He tripped, stumbled, caught himself. We were in the control room now, monitors glowing. The main broadcast console lit up. Trevor saw the screens, saw his own face on one of them, a still frame from the segment, frozen mid-rage. He screamed, grabbed a monitor, yanked it off the desk. The whole room shook. And that's when I knew. This was the moment, the final shot. Trevor charged at me with a heavy monitor raised to strike. I didn't panic. Decades of working in chaos had trained me to stay calm. I read his angle, momentum, and the room layout I knew better than anyone. He was bigger and younger, but not thinking. At the last second, I stepped aside and yanked a power cable tight across his path. He tripped, stumbled forward, and I kicked a rolling chair into his legs. He crashed into the console, knocking the wind out of him as the monitor pinned his arm. He gasped, red-faced and furious. You can't do this. I already did. He threatened lawsuits and accusations. I pointed to the cameras. Everything is recorded. They'll see you break in and attack me. Realization hit him hard. He was trapped. I stepped close. At dinner you thought you were teaching my daughter. Now it's your turn. I pressed a button. Every screen in the control room lit up at once. The unedited segment aired live. Tessa telling the truth about Trevor Lang. Her calm voice filled the room. The on-air light glowed red. Trevor went pale. Turn it off. I'm not turning anything off. He lunged for the controls. I twisted his wrist away. He cried out, helpless. You're going to watch, I said. On the screens, Tessa described the first time he'd hurt her, screamed at her, threatened her. More evidence followed. Employee statements, financial records, footage of him raging at staff. Trevor struggled under the monitor, panicked. Please, stop it. I'll do anything. There's nothing you can do, I said. It's already out there. And then the dinner. The camera angle was perfect. Showed Trevor grabbing Tessa's shoulder. Showed the way she flinched. Showed Elin clapping, smiling, saying those words. That's how she learns to behave. Trevor made a sound like a wounded animal. You edited that. You manipulated. I didn't edit anything. That's raw footage. Timestamp and everything. Behind us, the door burst open. Elin stood there, frozen in the doorway. She was perfectly dressed as always, expensive suit, hair styled, makeup flawless. But her face was slack with shock. She stared at the wall of screens. At her son's crimes playing out in high definition. At her own voice praising abuse. Trevor, she whispered. He didn't answer, just stared at the monitors, watching his entire life collapse in real time. The broadcast showed more, clips of him at the restaurant berating a hostess until she cried, firing a line cook for asking about overtime pay, bragging to investors about how he kept his wife in line. Every ugly moment, every cruel word, every mask he'd worn stripped away to reveal the truth underneath. Elin took a step into the room. Her hand went to her throat. Turn it off. Graham, turn it off right now. I didn't move. No. This is slander. You're destroying him. He destroyed himself. I'm just showing people what he did. On screen, Tessa's testimony continued. She talked about the night Trevor shoved her into a wall, the time he grabbed Maisie's arm hard enough to make her cry, the constant grinding fear of never knowing when he'd snap next. Her voice remained steady throughout. No crying, no dramatic emphasis, just facts delivered with quiet, unshakable conviction. It was the most incriminating footage I'd ever captured. Aileen's composure finally broke. You can't do this to us. We're family. You stopped being family the moment you applauded harm. I was trying to help. Tessa needed discipline. She needed protection. From him, from you, and I'm giving it to her. Trevor finally managed to push the monitor off his arm. He forced himself upright, chest heaving, eyes wide with panic. A thin line of red marked a cut on his forehead where he'd struck the console. He looked at me, at the screens, at his mother. It's over, he said, voice hollow. It's all over. Yes, I said. It is. Security burst through the door behind Elin. 3 guards, moving fast, eyes scanning the room for threats. They saw the destroyed equipment, saw Trevor bleeding and disheveled, saw me standing calmly by the console. Sir, we need you to step back, the lead guard said to Trevor. Trevor didn't resist. Just stood there, swaying slightly, staring at nothing. They pulled his arms behind his back, secured them with zip ties, read him his rights in flat professional tones. Elin started screaming. You can't arrest him? He didn't do anything wrong. Ma'am, he broke into the building, destroyed property, assaulted an employee. We have it all on camera. That man? She pointed at me. That man orchestrated this whole thing. The guard looked at me. Sir? I was working late, I said calmly. He broke in. Attacked me. I defended myself. Everything's on the security footage. The guard nodded. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a statement. Of course. They led Trevor toward the door. He didn't struggle, didn't speak, just walked like a man in a dream, disconnected from reality. Elin followed, still screaming. This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have resources. You'll pay for this, Graham Brentor. The door closed behind them. The control room fell silent. On the screens, the segment was ending. Tessa's final words. I'm telling this story because I want other women to know. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you can get out. The station logo appeared. Cut to commercial. I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, letting my heart rate settle. Then I pulled out my phone. Called Lydia. It's done, I said. Is he arrested? It's over. She exhaled. Come home. I will. I need to give a statement first. Graham. Yeah? I'm proud of you. I closed my eyes. I know. I hung up, looked around the control room, at the damaged equipment, the scattered cables, the monitor still lying where it had pinned Trevor's arm. Miles appeared in the doorway. He looked pale, shaken. Graham, what the hell happened? Trevor Lang broke in, tried to stop the broadcast. I defended myself. Jesus Christ. He ran a hand through his hair. The phones are ringing off the hook. Everyone saw it. The whole city. Good. Good? Graham, this is... He stopped, studied my face. You planned this. I planned to broadcast the truth. What Trevor did after that was his choice. You knew he'd come. I suspected. Miles stared at me for a long moment. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the most reckless. Maybe both? Corporate's going to have a field day with this. Let them. Everything I did was legal. Everything I aired was true. They can't touch me. He shook his head slowly. You're probably right. But you just made a lot of powerful people very nervous. They should be nervous, if they're hiding the same things Trevor was. Miles left to deal with the corporate calls and the media frenzy already building outside the station. I stayed in the control room, sat down in the chair, watched the news cycle pick up the story. Within an hour, it was trending on every social media platform. Your Tidewater Grill, Zaudrenan Trevor Lang, your Speak Up. People were sharing the segment, commenting, expressing outrage and support in equal measure. Some called me a hero. Others said I'd gone too far. I didn't care about either. I'd done what I set out to do. The police took my statement at the station. I showed them the security footage, explained the sequence of events, provided documentation of Trevor's prior threats and violations. They asked if I wanted to press charges. Absolutely. They filed the report, told me someone would be in touch. I drove home through empty streets. The city was quiet, dark. Most people were asleep, unaware that something fundamental had just shifted. But by morning, everyone would know. Lydia was waiting on the porch when I pulled into the driveway. Tessa stood beside her, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red from crying. I got out of the car, walked up the steps. Tessa grabbed me, pulled me into a fierce hug. I saw it. I saw the whole thing. Everyone saw it. I know. My phone won't stop ringing. People I haven't talked to in years, friends, family, everyone. What are they saying? That they're sorry, that they didn't know, that they wish they'd helped. She pulled back, looked at me with wet eyes. Dad, you did it. You really did it. We did it. This was your story, your courage. I just made sure people heard it. She shook her head. No, I was ready to live with it forever. You're the one who said enough. Maisie appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. What's happening? Tessa knelt down, pulled her close. Something good, baby. Something really good. We went inside, made tea, sat in the living room while the night slowly gave way to dawn. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from colleagues, friends, strangers who'd found my number somehow. I turned it off. This wasn't about me. It was about the woman sitting across from me, finally breathing free, about the little girl curled up on the couch, no longer afraid. That was all that mattered. Morning came with sirens. Not literal ones, just the digital kind. Every news outlet, blog, and social media platform screaming about Trevor Lang and the Tidewater Grill and the broadcast that had torn open the city's polite facade. I made coffee while Lydia monitored the fallout on her laptop. CNN picked it up, she said. So did the Washington Post. National? International. BBC has a piece. Al Jazeera. Even some outlets in Europe. I poured 2 cups, set one in front of her. What are they saying? That it's either brilliant investigative journalism or a dangerous precedent for using media as a weapon? She scrolled through articles. The legal experts are split. Half say you're protected by the First Amendment. The other half think Trevor has grounds for a lawsuit. Let him try. His lawyer already released a statement. Says the broadcast was a coordinated character elimination and they're exploring all legal options. Of course they are. Tessa came downstairs, phone in hand, looking overwhelmed. My social media is exploding. Thousands of messages, most of them supportive, but some, she trailed off. Some what? Some people are calling me a liar, saying I made it all up to get revenge, that you manipulated me into doing this. I set down my coffee. Do you want me to respond? No. My lawyer said not to engage. Let the evidence speak for itself. Smart. She sat down at the table, hands shaking slightly. I got a call from a producer at Good Morning America. They want me to come on the show. Tell my story. Do you want to? I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me just wants to hide. Lydia reached across the table, covered Tessa's hand with hers. You don't owe anyone anything. You've already been brave enough. But what if I could help other women? What if my story could... Then do it, I said. But only if you want to. Not because you feel obligated. She nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Maisie appeared, dragging her stuffed rabbit. She climbed into Tessa's lap without a word. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing, being together. The doorbell rang. I tensed, checked the security camera feed on my phone. A woman in her 30s stood on the porch holding a notebook. Press credentials hung around her neck. Reporter, I said. Should I? No, I'll handle it. I opened the door halfway. Can I help you? She smiled professionally. Mr. Brentor, I'm Jennifer Hastings with the Metro Daily. I was hoping to get a comment about last night's broadcast. No comment. Just a few questions. The public has a right to know. The public saw everything they needed to see. That's all I have to say. But there are allegations that you orchestrated this as a personal vendetta. Those allegations come from a man who was just arrested for assault and destruction of property. I'll let you decide how credible that is. She tried a different angle. What would you say to people who think you went too far? I thought about that for a moment, about Trevor's face in the control room, about Tessa's testimony, about Maisie growing up in a house filled with fear. I'd say they've never watched someone they love get slowly destroyed by someone who's supposed to protect them. So you admit this was personal? Everything important is personal. Doesn't make it wrong. I closed the door. She knocked again. I didn't answer. Eventually, she left. By noon, there were 6 reporters camped out across the street. 2 TV vans, a photographer with a long-range lens. We closed the curtains, stayed inside. The calls kept coming. The station, the police, lawyers, advocacy groups wanting to use Tessa's story, publishers asking about book deals. Lydia fielded most of them, took notes. Organized everything into categories. Urgent, important, ignore. Trevor's lawyer called twice, left threatening voicemails about defamation and emotional distress. Lydia called our lawyer, a woman named Patricia Mohan who specialized in First Amendment cases. Send me everything, Patricia said. Every piece of footage, every document, every communication. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget. How strong is our position? Lydia asked. Ironclad. Everything Graham aired was factually accurate and documented. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. They have no case. What about the argument that it was a personal attack? Doesn't matter. Journalists are allowed to investigate people they know. As long as the reporting is truthful, his relationship to the subject is irrelevant. Lydia thanked her and hung up. We're good, she told me. I know. She studied my face. You really aren't worried, are you? No. Why not? Because I know what I did, and I'd do it again. That afternoon, Elin called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. What do you want? Her voice was ice. To tell you that you've destroyed an innocent man. Trevor's a lot of things. Innocent isn't one of them. He made mistakes. Every marriage has rough patches. That doesn't give you the right to ruin his life on national television. He didn't just make mistakes, Elin. He mistreated his wife for years, threatened to take her daughter, intimidated his employees. Those aren't rough patches. That's a long-term pattern of harmful behavior. You took things out of context, edited the footage to make him look worse than he is. I aired the raw recordings with timestamps. Nothing was changed except for trimming. Everything you saw happened exactly that way. You're lying. Then take legal action. Bring it to court. Put everything in front of a jury. Let's see what they decide. Silence. That's what I thought, I said. This isn't finished. Yes, it is. You just haven't come to terms with it. I'll make you pay for this. Both of you. I have resources, connections. I can make your lives miserable. Lydia's voice came from behind me, calm and unwavering. Go ahead and try. We'll add harassment to the list of violations, along with conspiring to encourage his behavior if we can prove your involvement, and we can. Elin let out a strained sound. You recorded this call, didn't you? Every word, Lydia said. The line went silent. I set down the phone, looked at Lydia. That was reckless. So was taking on Trevor in the first place. We're past caution now. She was right. We'd crossed the point of no return the moment I pressed that button in the control room. Now it was just a matter of seeing it through. Evening brought new developments. The Restaurant Industry Association released a statement condemning trial by media and calling for due process and presumption of innocence. An hour later, 3 different restaurant owners came forward with their own stories about Trevor. Unpaid invoices, verbal abuse, one allegation of physical assault against a delivery driver. The association went quiet. A women's advocacy group organized a rally outside the Tidewater Grill. 50 people showed up with signs. Believe survivors. No more silence. Justice for Tessa. Tessa watched the coverage with tears streaming down her face. I never wanted this to be so big, she whispered. I know. I just wanted him to stop hurting me. He has. That's what matters. She leaned against my shoulder. Do you think he'll ever understand what he did wrong? I don't know. Probably not. Then what was the point? The point wasn't to change him, it was to stop him. And we did. She nodded against my shoulder, quiet, exhausted. Maisie had fallen asleep on the couch, curled under a blanket, peaceful. That image, my granddaughter sleeping without fear, that was worth everything, worth the reporters, the threats, the legal battles, worth every consequence that was still coming. The next morning brought police updates. Trevor had been formally charged, breaking and entering, assault, destruction of property, violating a restraining order. His bail was set at $50,000. Elin paid it. He was released with conditions, ankle monitor, mandatory counseling, no contact with me, Tessa, or anyone at the station. I got the notification on my phone. Felt nothing. He was out, but he wasn't free. The charges would stick. The evidence was overwhelming, and even if somehow they didn't, his reputation was obliterated beyond any hope of recovery. Miles called late that afternoon. We need to talk about your future here. My stomach tightened. Okay. Corporate's nervous. The legal department is nervous. Everyone's nervous. I understand. But the board reviewed everything, saw the footage, the documentation, the whole paper trail. And they agree you followed proper journalistic procedures. Everything was vetted, sourced, and legally sound. I exhaled. So I still have a job? You still have a job, with a warning that you're never to work on a story involving anyone you're personally connected to again without explicit approval from 3 different department heads. Fair. Graham, what you did, it was incredible work, but it scared the hell out of everyone. You weaponized everything we teach about investigative journalism and pointed it at one target with surgical precision. He deserved it. Maybe, probably, but it's still terrifying to watch. I won't do it again. Good, because I don't think my heart could take it. He hung up. I sat in the quiet house, phone in hand, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The dinner, the call, the cameras, the slow, methodical destruction of a man who thought he was untouchable. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just the cold certainty that it was done. The weeks that followed were a blur of depositions, interviews, and legal maneuvering. Trevor's lawyer tried everything, accused me of entrapment, claimed the broadcast violated privacy laws, argued that I'd manufactured evidence. Patricia Mohan demolished every argument with clinical efficiency. We had timestamps, witnesses, independent verification of every claim. The case against me fell apart before it even began, but the case against Trevor was just getting started. The district attorney's office reviewed the footage, interviewed Tessa, looked at the years of documented abuse. They added charges: domestic intimidation, terroristic threats, criminal harassment. Trevor's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. The DA refused. "This is going to trial," Patricia told me. "They want to make an example of him." Good. Tessa was called to testify before the grand jury. She was terrified. I drove her to the courthouse, stayed in the waiting room while she went inside. She emerged 2 hours later, pale but steady. "How did it go?" I asked. "They asked me everything, showed me the footage, asked if I felt coerced or manipulated by you." "What did you say?" "I said you were the only person who ever tried to help me." Her voice cracked. "I said if it wasn't for you, I'd still be in that house, pretending everything was fine." The grand jury indicted Trevor on all counts. His trial was set for 6 months out. Elin tried one more time to salvage things. She appeared on a local talk show, perfectly composed, perfectly dressed, claimed Trevor was the real victim, that he'd been set up by a vengeful father-in-law. The host pushed back. "But the footage shows moments taken out of context. Every marriage has arguments." Multiple employees have corroborated the hostile work environment. Disgruntled former staff looking for attention. The host ended the interview early. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Ellen's remaining social connections evaporated overnight. Within a month, she'd put her house on the market. Within 2, she was gone. Moved somewhere out west. I didn't care where. Trevor's trial approached. Tessa was the prosecution's star witness. She prepared for weeks, went over her testimony with lawyers, practiced staying calm under cross-examination. The night before she was scheduled to testify, she came to the house. "I'm scared," she said. "I know." "What if I freeze?" "You won't. You're stronger than you think." "How do you know?" "Because you survived years with him. This is just one day." She testified the next day. I wasn't allowed in the courtroom. I was on the witness list, too. But Lydia was there. She texted me updates. "She's doing great. Calm. Clear. Devastating." Defense attorney is trying to rattle her. She's not budging. When it was over, Tessa emerged looking exhausted but unbowed. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Like I just ran a marathon." "But you finished." "Yeah, I finished." My turn came 2 days later. I walked into the courtroom in my best suit, took the stand, swore to tell the truth. Trevor's lawyer circled like a shark. "Mr. Brentor, isn't it true that you held a personal grudge against my client?" I had a problem with how he treated my daughter. "But you focused on him specifically." "I investigated credible allegations of abuse and unsafe business practices. That's called journalism." "You aired his private family matters on television." "I aired his crimes. There's a difference." The lawyer tried different angles, suggested I'd fabricated evidence, edited footage deceptively. I answered every question calmly, referred to timestamps, documents, witness statements. After 2 hours, he gave up. The prosecution's case was airtight. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came a month later. 3 years in prison. 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, permanent restraining order. Trevor stood in the courtroom, hollow-eyed, as the judge read the sentence. He didn't look at Tessa, didn't look at anyone, just stared at nothing as they led him away. Tessa cried in the parking lot afterward. Not sad tears, relief. "It's really over," she said. "Yes." We went home, ordered pizza, sat around the kitchen table like a normal family. Maisie drew pictures. Tessa laughed at something Lydia said. For the first time in years, there was no fear in the house. Just peace. Life moved forward. Tessa found her own place, started working at the nonprofit helping abuse survivors. She was good at it. Other women sought her out, found strength in her story. I went back to filming city council meetings and traffic accidents. People treated me differently now, some with respect, some with suspicion. I didn't care. A young woman approached me one day after work. "Mr. Brentor, I saw your story about Trevor Lang." "Okay." "I'm in a similar situation. I don't know how to get out." I looked at her, saw the fear. "Let's talk," I said. I connected her with Tessa's nonprofit, Helped her document everything. 3 months later, she was safe. She wasn't the last. Word spread quietly. The cameraman who knew how to build a case. I helped when I could. Trevor served 2 years. Got released early, moved to a different state. I never heard from him again. Elin passed away alone somewhere out west. Heart failure, no service. Years passed. Maisie grew up strong and confident. Graduated high school, got into a good college. Tessa walked her to campus on move-in day. "She's going to be okay," Tessa told me afterward. "I know." Lydia and I grew old together. The cameras stayed packed away. I'd protected the people I loved, destroyed the one who'd hurt them, and I'd sleep just fine, knowing that. One evening, 5 years after everything, I sat on the porch with Lydia. The sun was setting, the street quiet. My phone buzzed. A message from someone I didn't know. "You don't know me, but you helped my sister 2 years ago. She got out because of you. She's safe now. Thank you." I showed it to Lydia. She smiled. "See? It mattered. Maybe. Definitely." I looked out at the street, at the normal, quiet neighborhood where normal people live normal lives, and I thought about that dinner table 5 years ago. 3 times Trevor had grabbed Tessa. 3 times I'd counted. 1 call I'd made, and everything that came after. I'd do it all again, without hesitation, without regret.